Sarah Martinez stood in front of the tall glass building that would be her new workplace. The morning sun reflected off the windows, making them shine like mirrors. She took a deep breath and checked her watch. It was 7:30 in the morning, and she was exactly 30 minutes early for her first day. This was her habit. She always arrived early for important things. The building was impressive. Sterling Defense Contractors occupied 15 floors of this downtown tower. The company logo was carved into black marble at the entrance. Sarah had researched the company thoroughly before accepting the job. They handled military contracts worth millions of dollars. They worked with the Navy, Army, Air Force, and other government agencies. It was exactly the kind of place where her skills would be useful. Sarah wore a crisp white button-down shirt with dark gray pants and black shoes. Her dark hair was pulled back into a neat ponytail. She looked professional and ready for business. Her shirt sleeves were rolled up to just below her elbows, showing her forearms. On her left wrist was a small tattoo, two delicate wings that looked like they were ready to take flight. The tattoo was no bigger than a quarter coin, but it was perfectly detailed. Each feather line was clear and precise. She had gotten this tattoo many years ago. It meant something very special to her, but she never talked about it with strangers. Most people who saw it thought it was just a pretty design. They often made comments about how cute it looked or asked if she had gotten it on vacation somewhere. Sarah would just smile and change the subject. The real story behind those wings was something she kept private. As Sarah walked through the lobby, she noticed how fancy everything was. The floors were polished marble. There were expensive paintings on the walls. Large leather chairs were arranged around glass tables. A security guard sat behind a curved desk made of dark wood. Everything screamed money and success. The security guard looked up as Sarah approached. He was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. His name tag said Frank. Sarah showed him her new employee ID card and told him she was starting work today. Frank smiled and welcomed her to the company. He gave her a visitor badge and told her to go to the 15th floor where Human Resources was located. The elevator was just as fancy as the lobby. The walls were mirrors and the buttons were gold-colored. Sarah pressed 15 and watched the floors count up as she rose higher in the building. She could see the city getting smaller through the glass walls of the elevator. It was a beautiful view, but Sarah was focused on the day ahead. When the elevator doors opened on the 15th floor, Sarah was greeted by a receptionist with bright red hair and a big smile. The woman introduced herself as Kelly and said she had been expecting Sarah. Kelly gave Sarah a folder full of paperwork and a schedule for her first day. She also gave her a temporary key card that would let her access her floor and the cafeteria. Kelly walked Sarah around the 15th floor, showing her where everything was located. There was a break room with coffee and snacks. There was a copy room with machines for printing and scanning. There were conference rooms with large tables and video screens for meetings. Everything was modern and well organized. After the tour, Kelly took Sarah down to the 12th floor where she would be working. The 12th floor was the analysis department. This was where Sarah would spend most of her time studying military contracts and defense projects. The floor was set up as an open office with cubicles arranged in rows. Each cubicle had a computer, phone, and filing cabinet. Sarah's cubicle was in the middle of the floor near a window. She could see other office buildings and busy streets below. Her desk was clean and empty except for a computer and a small plant that someone had left for her. There was a note attached to the plant that said, "Welcome to the team." As Sarah was setting up her computer and organizing her desk space, other employees began arriving for work. She could hear conversations starting up around the office. People were talking about their weekends and making plans for lunch. The office was filling up with energy as the workday began. Around 8:30, a woman with blonde hair and expensive jewelry approached Sarah's cubicle. She was wearing a designer suit and carrying a coffee cup that cost more than most people spent on lunch. Her name was Jessica, and she introduced herself as the marketing manager. Jessica had a big smile, but her eyes seemed to be studying Sarah carefully. Jessica welcomed Sarah to the company and asked how she was settling in. Sarah thanked her and said everything was going well so far. Jessica noticed Sarah was unpacking some personal items to put on her desk. There was a small American flag in a wooden stand. There was a photo of Sarah with an older woman who looked like her mother. There was also a coffee mug with wings printed on it. Jessica commented on the coffee mug and asked if Sarah was interested in flying. Sarah said she had always found wings interesting and left it at that. Jessica kept looking at Sarah's wrist where the tattoo was visible. She seemed curious but did not ask about it directly. Instead, she made small talk about the company and the people who worked there. More employees stopped by Sarah's cubicle throughout the morning to introduce themselves. There was Marcus from the sales department. He was tall and spoke loudly about everything. He wore expensive watches and talked about his car a lot. There was Jennifer from accounting, who seemed nice but very busy. There was David from human resources, who brought Sarah more paperwork to fill out. Each person who met, Sarah seemed friendly enough, but she could tell they were all trying to figure out who she was and where she came from. They asked questions about her previous jobs and her education. Sarah answered politely but kept her responses brief. She had learned long ago that it was better to let people get to know her through her work, rather than through stories about her past. By 10 in the morning, Sarah had been assigned her first project. She would be analyzing a proposal for a new type of military vehicle. The project involved studying technical specifications and cost estimates. It was exactly the kind of work she was good at. Sarah opened the files on her computer and began reading through hundreds of pages of documents. As she worked, Sarah could feel her colleagues watching her from time to time. She was the new person and everyone was curious about her. That was normal in any workplace. What Sarah did not realize was that some of her new co-workers were already making assumptions about her, based on very little information. They saw a quiet woman with a small tattoo and thought they knew what kind of person she was. The morning passed quickly as Sarah focused on her work. She was thorough and careful with everything she reviewed. She made notes and asked good questions when she needed clarification. By lunchtime, she had already impressed her supervisor with the quality of her analysis. Sarah looked forward to proving herself at this new job. She had worked hard to get where she was, and she was ready for the challenges ahead. She had no idea that the small tattoo on her wrist would soon become the center of attention in ways she never expected. 3 days had passed since Sarah started working at Sterling Defense Contractors. She had settled into her routine and was making good progress on her first assignment. Every morning, she arrived at 7:30 sharp and stayed focused on her work until it was time to go home. Her colleagues had begun to notice that she was different from most new employees. Sarah never joined the morning gossip sessions that happened around the coffee machine. She did not complain about her workload or ask for help with basic tasks. Instead, she quietly studied every document that crossed her desk and asked intelligent questions that impressed even the senior managers. Her work was detailed and accurate. She caught mistakes that others had missed and offered suggestions that saved the company time and money. But while Sarah was earning respect for her professional skills, her personal life remained a mystery to everyone around her. She ate lunch alone at her desk while reading work documents. She did not share stories about her weekend plans or her family. When people tried to make small talk, she was polite but brief. This made some of her colleagues curious and others slightly annoyed. Jessica from marketing had become particularly interested in learning more about Sarah. During her coffee breaks, Jessica would walk past Sarah's cubicle and try to start conversations. She would comment on Sarah's clothes or ask about her weekend. Sarah always responded politely but never gave detailed answers. This only made Jessica more determined to figure out who Sarah really was. On Thursday morning, Jessica was standing near the copy machine when she noticed Sarah walking toward the break room. Sarah was wearing a navy blue blouse with sleeves that were rolled up to her elbows. The small wing tattoo on her left wrist was clearly visible under the office lights. Jessica had been curious about this tattoo since Sarah's first day, but had not found the right moment to ask about it. As Sarah reached for a coffee cup, Jessica approached her with a bright smile. "Good morning, Sarah," she said cheerfully. "I love your tattoo. It is so delicate and pretty. Did you get it somewhere special?" Sarah looked down at her wrist and then back at Jessica. She smiled politely and said it was just something she had gotten a while ago. Jessica pressed further, asking if it had any special meaning, or if Sarah had gotten it with friends. Sarah poured coffee into her cup and stirred in some cream while she considered how to answer. The tattoo meant everything to her, but she was not ready to share that story with her new colleagues. Instead, she said it was just a design she liked and excused herself to get back to work. Jessica watched her walk away, feeling frustrated that she had not learned anything new. But Jessica was not the type of person to give up easily. That afternoon, during lunch break, she mentioned Sarah's tattoo to a group of colleagues who were eating in the break room. "Did you notice the little wing tattoo on Sarah's wrist?" she asked Marcus and Jennifer, who were sitting at her table. Marcus looked up from his sandwich and shrugged. "I saw it but did not think much about it," he said. "Lots of people have tattoos these days." Jennifer from accounting had noticed the tattoo too. She leaned forward and lowered her voice as if she was sharing a secret. "It looks like one of those trendy tattoos that young people get," she whispered. "You know, the kind that are supposed to look deep and meaningful, but are really just popular designs from the internet." The three of them began speculating about where Sarah might have gotten the tattoo and what kind of person she was before coming to work at Sterling Defense. Jessica suggested that Sarah seemed like the type who might have gotten the tattoo during a wild phase in college. "Maybe she used to be a party girl and now she is trying to be all serious and professional," she said with a laugh. Marcus agreed, saying that quiet people often had wild pasts they were trying to hide. Jennifer added that the wing design was probably chosen because it looked cool, without requiring any real thought or meaning. Their conversation was interrupted when David from Human Resources joined their table. He had overheard part of their discussion and seemed uncomfortable with the direction it was taking. David reminded them that it was not appropriate to gossip about new employees and that they should focus on helping Sarah feel welcome rather than speculating about her personal choices, but the seed had already been planted. Over the next few days, other employees began noticing Sarah's tattoo and joining in the speculation about its meaning. Some thought it looked like something a teenager would get on impulse. Others suggested it was probably copied from a popular design on social media. A few people made jokes about Sarah thinking she could fly or having dreams of being a bird. The comments started small and seemingly harmless. Someone might make a casual remark about pretty tattoos when Sarah walked by. Another person might mention how popular wing designs had become among young women. But gradually the comments became more pointed and less kind. People began referring to Sarah as the girl with the cute little tattoo. Some started making jokes about whether she thought she was an angel. Sarah noticed the change in atmosphere around her, but chose to ignore it. She had dealt with workplace gossip before and knew that the best response was usually no response at all. She continued to focus on her work and treat everyone with professional courtesy. When someone made a comment about her tattoo, she would smile politely and change the subject back to work matters. But the comments were starting to affect her more than she let on. Each joke and speculation about her tattoo felt like an insult to something sacred. The wings on her wrist represented years of training, sacrifice, and service that these people could never understand. They represented moments of courage and fear that had shaped who she was as a person. To hear them dismissed as a trendy fashion choice or an impulsive decision was painful, in ways Sarah had not expected. By Friday afternoon, the office gossip about Sarah's tattoo had reached almost everyone on the 12th floor. Even people who had never spoken to her directly had opinions about what the tattoo meant and what kind of person Sarah was. Some of the comments were mean-spirited, while others were just thoughtless. But all of them showed how quickly people were willing to judge someone based on a small piece of information. Sarah was working late that Friday evening when she overheard Jessica talking to Marcus near the elevator. They were discussing weekend plans when Jessica mentioned that she was thinking about getting a tattoo herself. "Maybe something small and trendy like Sarah's," she said with a laugh. Marcus responded that those kinds of tattoos were probably chosen from a book at the tattoo shop, without any real thought behind them. As Sarah listened to their conversation, she felt a mix of sadness and anger. These people had no idea what they were talking about, but they spoke with such confidence about things they did not understand. She thought about all the times she had risked her life to save others. She thought about the training and dedication required to earn the right to wear those wings. She thought about the friends she had lost and the families she had helped bring loved ones home to. But Sarah also knew that getting angry would not change anything. Her colleagues had made up their minds about who she was based on their own limited experiences and assumptions. The only thing that might change their opinions was time and the chance to see who she really was through her actions, rather than their speculations. Sarah packed up her things to go home that evening. She made a decision. She would continue to do her job to the best of her ability and treat everyone with respect regardless of how they treated her. She would not let their comments and jokes diminish the meaning of what she had accomplished or the pride she felt in her service. The wings on her wrist would remain a private symbol of honor no matter what others thought about them. She had no way of knowing that very soon the truth about Those wings would be revealed in a way that would shock everyone who had made assumptions about her. The quiet woman with the pretty little tattoo was about to surprise them all in ways they could never imagine. Monday morning brought a new level of attention to Sarah's tattoo that made her uncomfortable. Over the weekend, the office gossip had apparently continued through text messages and social media. When Sarah arrived at work, she could feel eyes following her as she walked to her desk. Conversation stopped when she passed by and resumed in whispers after she had gone. Jessica had spent her weekend researching wing tattoos online. She had found dozens of similar designs on Pinterest and Instagram. She had screenshots saved on her phone showing celebrities and influencers with small wing tattoos in various places. Jessica was convinced that Sarah had simply copied a popular trend without any original thought or personal meaning behind it. During the morning coffee break, Jessica gathered a small group around her desk to share her research. "Look at all these wing tattoos," she said, showing her phone screen to Marcus, Jennifer, and two other colleagues named Tom and Lisa. "They are everywhere on social media. Sarah probably just picked one she liked and got it done at some mall tattoo shop." Marcus looked at the images and nodded in agreement. "These are definitely the kind of tattoos that people get when they want to seem deep and spiritual, without actually being deep and spiritual," he said. Tom laughed and added that wing tattoos were probably the most basic choice someone could make. "It is like getting a butterfly or a heart," he said. "No creativity or personal story required." Lisa from the legal department had joined the conversation late but quickly caught up. She had noticed Sarah's tattoo during a meeting last week and had wondered about it. Now hearing the discussion, she felt emboldened to share her own opinion. "I bet she got it during some kind of rebellious phase," she said. "Maybe when she was trying to reinvent herself after a breakup or something dramatic like that." The group continued their speculation about Sarah's motivations and personality based entirely on a small tattoo they knew nothing about. They discussed whether she might have gotten it while traveling during college, or as part of some kind of spiritual awakening phase that many young women went through. Each theory was more dismissive than the last and showed how little they thought of their new colleague. Sarah was at her desk working on a complex analysis when she overheard parts of their conversation. The break room was only 30 feet from her cubicle, and voices carried easily across the open office space. She tried to focus on her computer screen but found herself listening, despite her best efforts to ignore them. Each comment felt like a small cut that accumulated into a deeper wound. What bothered Sarah most was not that they were talking about her tattoo, but that they were so confident in their ignorance. They spoke as if they knew everything about her based on a single piece of visual information. None of them had bothered to get to know her as a person or learn about her background and experiences. They preferred to create a story that fit their assumptions rather than discover the truth. By Tuesday, the comments had moved from private conversations to more public remarks. When Sarah walked into the break room, Jessica made a loud comment about how cute and trendy her tattoo looked. When she passed by Marcus's desk, he mentioned something about flight and wings in a joking tone that made nearby colleagues laugh. During a team meeting, someone made a reference to angels that was clearly directed at Sarah. Each comment was designed to seem casual and harmless, but Sarah could see the intent behind them. Her colleagues were testing her reactions and enjoying the fact that she remained silent. They seemed to think her lack of response meant she was embarrassed or had been caught in some kind of pretense. This only encouraged them to continue and escalate their behavior. Wednesday brought a new development when Jennifer from accounting approached Sarah's desk with what seemed like a friendly question. "Sarah, I hope you don't mind me asking, but I am thinking about getting a tattoo myself," she said with a smile. "I really like yours and was wondering where you got it done. Did you just pick it from a book or did you design it yourself?" Sarah looked up from her work and studied Jennifer's face. She could see the curiosity mixed with skepticism in her expression. Jennifer was not really interested in getting a tattoo. She was fishing for information to share with the gossip group. Sarah decided to give an honest but limited answer. "It has personal meaning to me," she said simply. "I would suggest taking time to think about what would be meaningful to you." Jennifer pressed further, asking what kind of personal meaning a wing tattoo could have. Sarah remained polite but firm in her response. "It is something private," she said. "I am sure you understand that some things are personal." Jennifer walked away, disappointed that she had not gotten more information to share with her friends. That afternoon during lunch, the gossip group discussed Jennifer's conversation with Sarah. they interpreted her refusal to share details as proof that there was no real meaning behind the tattoo. If it really meant something important, she would be proud to talk about it, Jessica said. The fact that she won't explain it shows she is embarrassed because it is just a trendy design she copied from somewhere else. Tom suggested that maybe Sarah thought she was too good to explain herself to them. She acts all mysterious and professional, but she probably has the most basic backstory imaginable, he said. Marcus agreed, and added that quiet people often tried to seem more interesting than they actually were by being secretive about ordinary things. By Thursday, the mockery had become a regular part of the office culture. Sarah's tattoo was referenced in jokes during meetings. People made comments about flying in wings whenever she was around. Someone had even started calling her Angel Sarah behind her back in a way that was meant to be mocking, rather than endearing. The situation reached a new low on Thursday afternoon when Sarah was presenting her analysis of a military contract to a group of colleagues. She had spent days preparing a thorough report about cost-effectiveness and strategic advantages. Her presentation was professional and insightful, showing deep understanding of military operations and logistics. But instead of focusing on her excellent work, several people in the room seemed more interested in making quiet comments about her tattoo. She could see them whispering and smiling while she spoke. When she finished her presentation, Marcus made a comment about how she really seemed to soar through the material. The room erupted in laughter that had nothing to do with appreciation for her hard work. Sarah maintained her composure and answered questions about her analysis professionally. But inside she felt a growing frustration with the juvenile behavior of her colleagues. She had presented work that could save the company significant money and improve their relationships with military clients. Yet all they seemed to care about was making jokes about a tattoo they did not understand. That evening, Sarah stayed late at the office to work on her next project. The building was quiet and most of the lights were turned off. She enjoyed the peace and the chance to focus without distractions or comments about her appearance. As she worked, she thought about how different this job was from her previous experiences working with people who understood the value of respect and professionalism. Around 7 o'clock, Sarah heard voices coming from the conference room near her desk. The cleaning crew was supposed to be the only other people in the building, but she recognized the voices as belonging to some of her colleagues. They must have stayed late for a project or meeting. As she listened, she realized they were talking about her again. Jessica's voice was the loudest and clearest. "I still think there is something fake about her whole mysterious act," she was saying. "Nobody gets that secretive about a simple tattoo unless they are hiding something embarrassing." Marcus responded that he agreed completely. She probably got it during some kind of midlife crisis phase and now regrets it but doesn't want to admit it. Sarah felt a wave of anger wash over her as she listened to them tear apart her character based on their own ignorant assumptions. These people knew nothing about her service, her sacrifices, or the meaning behind the wings on her wrist. They had never risked their lives for others or earned the right to wear any symbol of honor. Yet they felt qualified to judge and mock something they could never understand. But Sarah also felt something else growing inside her. A quiet confidence that came from knowing who she really was, regardless of what others thought. She had faced far greater challenges than office gossip, and survived situations that would terrify the people making jokes about her. Their opinions could not diminish her accomplishments or change the truth about her service. As Sarah packed up her things to go home that night, she made a promise to herself. She would continue to do excellent work and treat everyone with respect. But she would also be ready for the day when the truth about her background would inevitably come to light. When that day came, her colleagues would learn that their assumptions had been completely wrong, and their mockery had been directed at someone who deserved their respect and gratitude instead. Friday morning brought exciting news that would change everything at Sterling Defense Contractors. Mr. Richardson, the company president, called an emergency meeting for all department heads and senior staff. Sarah was surprised to receive an invitation, since she was still relatively new to the company, but her excellent work on recent projects had caught the attention of upper management. The conference room was packed with the company's most important employees. Everyone was dressed in their best business attire and looked serious and focused. Mr. Richardson stood at the head of the long table with a presentation screen behind him. His expression showed both excitement and nervousness as he prepared to share the news. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mr. Richardson began, We have just received confirmation of the most important client meeting in our company's history. Next Friday, we will be hosting Commander Robert Hayes from the United States Navy. He is coming to review our proposal for the Atlantic defense contract worth $42 million. A murmur of excitement went through the room. The Atlantic defense contract was something Sterling Defense had been pursuing for over 18 months. It would be their largest military contract ever and would secure the company's future for years to come. Everyone knew how important this meeting would be for their careers and the company's success. Mr. Richardson continued explaining the details of Commander Hayes's visit. The commander was a highly decorated Navy SEAL with over 20 years of military service. He had served in multiple combat zones and was known for his strict standards and attention to detail. He would be evaluating not just their proposal, but also the competence and professionalism of their entire team. The presentation will need to be perfect, Mr. Richardson said, looking around the room at each person. Commander Hayes has a reputation for asking tough questions and expecting detailed answers. He does not tolerate incompetence or unprofessional behavior. This meeting will determine whether we get this contract or lose it to our competitors. Sarah listened carefully as Mr. Richardson outlined the schedule for the commander's visit. There would be a formal presentation followed by detailed discussions about technical specifications and implementation timelines. The commander would also want to meet key team members and assess their qualifications for handling such an important project. 2. Everyone's surprise, Mr. Richardson announced that Sarah would be giving the technical analysis portion of the presentation. Her recent work on military logistics and operational planning had impressed the senior partners. They felt her detailed understanding of military requirements made her the best choice to present the technical aspects of their proposal. Sarah felt honored to be chosen for such an important role, but she also felt the weight of responsibility. This presentation could make or break the company's chances of winning the contract. She would need to be thoroughly prepared and ready to answer any questions the commander might have about their technical capabilities. After the meeting ended, Sarah's colleagues gathered in small groups to discuss the upcoming visit. The excitement in the office was obvious, but so was the nervousness. Everyone knew that Commander Hayes would be evaluating not just their proposal, but their entire company culture and professionalism. Jessica approached Sarah with what seemed like genuine concern. "Sarah, I hope you are ready for this," she said. "Military people can be really strict and judgmental. You will need to make sure everything about your presentation is perfect. Even small details like your appearance will matter to someone like Commander Hayes." Sarah thanked Jessica for her concern but felt confident in her ability to handle the presentation. She had worked with military personnel before, though she did not share this information with her colleagues. She understood the importance of precision and professionalism when dealing with high-ranking military officers. Marcus joined their conversation and added his own advice. "You might want to consider covering up that tattoo for the meeting," he said, pointing to Sarah's wrist. "Military guys are pretty traditional and conservative. They might not appreciate seeing tattoos in a professional setting. You don't want to give him the wrong impression about our company culture." Other colleagues nodded in agreement. Tom suggested that Sarah should wear long sleeves or use makeup to hide the tattoo. Lisa mentioned that she had heard military officers could be very judgmental about personal appearance choices. Jennifer added that it would be better to play it safe and keep the tattoo hidden during such an important meeting. Sarah listened to their advice politely, but felt frustrated by their assumptions. They seemed to think that her tattoo was something shameful that needed to be hidden. They had no understanding of what it represented, or how a military officer might actually react to seeing it. But she decided not to argue with them and simply said she would consider their suggestions. The following week was intense, as everyone prepared for Commander Hayes's visit. Sarah spent countless hours reviewing technical specifications and preparing detailed answers to potential questions. She studied the commander's background and military service record to better understand his perspective and priorities. The office atmosphere became increasingly tense as the meeting approached. Jessica organized multiple practice sessions where team members rehearsed their presentations. Marcus made sure all the audio-visual equipment was working perfectly. Everyone was focused on making the best possible impression on their important visitor. During one of the practice sessions, Jessica again brought up the issue of Sarah's tattoo. She suggested that Sarah should definitely wear a long-sleeved blazer to cover it completely. "The last thing we need is for the commander to get distracted by personal fashion choices," she said. "We want him focused on our professional capabilities, not wondering about our judgment in personal matters." Sarah felt her patience wearing thin with the constant comments about her tattoo. But she also recognized that her colleagues were genuinely worried about the success of the meeting. They were projecting their own insecurities and assumptions onto her appearance choices. She decided to let them think she would follow their advice while making her own decision about what to wear. As the week progressed, Sarah noticed that the mockery about her tattoo had temporarily stopped. Her colleagues were too focused on the upcoming meeting to make jokes about her personal appearance. This gave her some relief and allowed her to concentrate on her preparation without the constant background noise of their comments. On Thursday evening, Sarah stayed late at the office to do final preparations for her presentation. She reviewed every slide and practiced her talking points until she could deliver them smoothly and confidently. She felt ready to present the technical analysis in a way that would impress Commander Hayes and help secure the contract for her company. As she was leaving the building that night, Sarah ran into the security guard Frank, who had welcomed her on her first day. He asked how she was enjoying working at Sterling Defense and whether she was nervous about the big meeting tomorrow. Sarah told him she felt prepared and confident about the presentation. Frank smiled and said he was sure she would do great. "You seem like someone who knows what they are doing," he said. "I have a good feeling about tomorrow's meeting." Sarah thanked him for his encouragement and headed home to get a good night's sleep before the most important day in the company's recent history. That night, Sarah laid out her clothes for the meeting. She chose a professional navy blue blazer with matching pants and a crisp white blouse. The blazer sleeves came to just below her elbows, leaving her forearms and wrists visible. She had decided not to hide her tattoo despite her colleagues' advice. The wings on her wrist were part of who she was, and she would not be ashamed of them regardless of what others thought. As Sarah prepared for bed, she felt calm and confident about the morning ahead. She had no way of knowing that her decision to wear the blazer with shorter sleeves would lead to a moment that would change how everyone at Sterling Defense Contractors saw her forever. The small wing tattoo that had been the subject of so much mockery and speculation was about to reveal its true meaning in the most dramatic way possible. Tomorrow would be the day when assumptions would be shattered and respect would finally be earned. Commander Hayes' visit would bring truth to light in a way that none of Sarah's colleagues could possibly imagine. Friday morning arrived with perfect weather and nervous energy filling every corner of Sterling Defense Contractors. Sarah arrived at the office an hour early to make final preparations for the most important presentation of her career. The building seemed to hum with anticipation as employees made last-minute adjustments to ensure everything would be perfect for Commander Hayes. Sarah wore her navy blue blazer with matching pants and a crisp white blouse exactly as she had planned. The blazer sleeves ended just below her elbows, leaving her wing tattoo clearly visible on her left wrist. She had made her decision to wear this outfit despite all the advice from her colleagues, and she felt confident in her choice. The conference room had been transformed for the occasion. Fresh flowers sat on the polished table. New pens and notebooks were placed at each seat. The presentation screen had been cleaned and tested multiple times. Even the coffee cups were the expensive china that the company usually saved for only the most important occasions. At 9:30, the entire team gathered in the conference room to review their presentations one final time. Mr. Richardson looked nervous but tried to project confidence as he reminded everyone of their roles. Jessica checked her notes again and again. Marcus adjusted his tie for the 5th time. Tom and Lisa whispered last-minute reminders to each other about key talking points. Sarah sat calmly reviewing her technical analysis presentation on her tablet. She felt prepared and ready to discuss every aspect of their proposal in detail. Her presentation covered cost analysis, implementation timelines, technical specifications, and risk management strategies. She had anticipated dozens of potential questions and prepared thorough answers for each one. As the team waited, Jessica could not resist making one final comment about Sarah's appearance. She leaned over and whispered, "Sarah, I really think you should reconsider covering that tattoo. It is not too late to put on a different blazer or use some makeup. Military commanders can be very traditional about these things." Sarah looked at Jessica with a calm smile and said she felt comfortable with her choice. She thanked Jessica for her concern but explained that she believed professional competence was more important than hiding small personal details. Jessica looked frustrated but did not push the issue. Further, since Commander Hayes would be arriving soon at exactly 10 o'clock, the security guard, Frank, called from the lobby to announce that Commander Hayes had arrived. Mr. Richardson immediately stood up and smoothed his suit jacket. Everyone else followed his lead and prepared to make the best possible first impression on their most important potential client. Sarah felt her heart rate increase slightly, but not from nervousness about the presentation. She was thinking about what it would be like to see a high-ranking military officer again after so many years. She wondered if Commander Hayes would remind her of the officers she had worked with during her own service. Those memories brought both pride and sadness that she had learned to carry quietly. The elevator doors opened and Commander Robert Hayes stepped into the 15th floor lobby. He was exactly what Sarah had expected from reading his service record. Tall and broad-shouldered with silver hair and intense blue eyes that seemed to take in every detail of his surroundings. His dress uniform was perfectly pressed with ribbons and medals that told the story of decades of distinguished service. Commander Hayes moved with the confident bearing of someone who had commanded respect in the most dangerous situations imaginable. His handshake was firm and his eye contact was direct as Mr. Richardson introduced him to the senior staff members. He spoke with a deep voice that carried authority without being loud or aggressive. The introductions proceeded in order of company hierarchy. Mr. Richardson introduced Jessica as their marketing manager who would be presenting the business development aspects of their proposal. Jessica stepped forward with a bright smile and shook the commander's hand while mentioning her MBA from Northwestern University and her 5 years of experience in defense contracting. Marcus was introduced next as the sales director who would discuss pricing and contract terms. He eagerly shook hands with Commander Hayes and mentioned his family's long history of military service, including his grandfather who had served in World War II. The commander nodded politely and moved on to the next person in line. Jennifer from accounting was introduced as the financial analyst who would present budget breakdowns and cost projections. Tom and Lisa were introduced as the legal and compliance specialists who would address regulatory requirements and risk management protocols. Each person tried to make a memorable impression by mentioning their credentials and experience. Finally, Mr. Richardson reached Sarah at the end of the line. Commander Hayes, this is Sarah Martinez, our senior analyst who will be presenting the technical specifications and implementation strategy. She has been with us for several weeks now and has already proven herself to be one of our most valuable team members. Sarah stepped forward with quiet confidence and extended her hand to Commander Hayes. Commander Hayes, it is an honor to meet you, she said in a clear, steady voice. I look forward to discussing the technical aspects of our proposal with you. Her handshake was firm and professional, and she maintained eye contact throughout the introduction. Commander Hayes accepted her handshake and began to respond with the same polite professionalism he had shown to everyone else. But then something changed. His eyes moved from her face to her left wrist where the small wing tattoo was clearly visible beneath the conference room lights. For just a moment, his polite expression shifted to something much more intense and focused. The change in Commander Hayes was subtle, but noticeable to anyone paying close attention. His eyes widened slightly as he studied the tattoo more carefully. His grip on Sarah's hand tightened just a fraction, and he held the handshake longer than he had with the other introductions. His breathing seemed to pause as he processed what he was seeing. Sarah noticed the change in his expression immediately. She saw recognition dawning in his eyes as he studied the wings on her wrist. She realized that unlike her colleagues, Commander Hayes understood exactly what those wings represented. He knew they were not a trendy fashion choice or an impulsive decoration. He recognized them as a symbol that had to be earned through courage, skill, and dedication. The rest of the Sterling defense team stood watching this introduction without understanding what was happening. They saw Commander Hayes pause and look at Sarah's tattoo, but they assumed he was having the same reaction they had expected. They thought he was disapproving of her unprofessional appearance choice and judging her negatively for displaying a tattoo during an important business meeting. Jessica exchanged a worried glance with Marcus, thinking their fears about the tattoo had been confirmed. Tom shifted uncomfortably, wondering if Sarah's decision to keep the tattoo visible had already damaged their chances of winning the contract. Mr. Richardson began to look nervous as the handshake continued, longer than normal. But Sarah understood exactly what was happening. She could see in Commander Hayes' eyes that he knew what her wings meant and where she had earned them. She could see respect beginning to replace the polite professionalism he had shown to the others. She could see that he recognized her as a fellow warrior, rather than just another civilian defense contractor. The moment stretched on as Commander Hayes continued to study her tattoo and her face. Sarah remained calm and confident, knowing that her secret was about to be revealed in a way that would shock everyone in the room. She had spent weeks listening to jokes and mockery about her wings. In a few seconds, all of that would change forever. The silence in the conference room grew thick as everyone waited to see what Commander Hayes would do next. No one except Sarah understood that they were witnessing the moment before a revelation that would transform how everyone saw the quiet woman with the wing tattoo. The truth about Sarah Martinez was about to come to light in the most dramatic way possible. The silence in the conference room stretched on as Commander Hayes continued to study Sarah's wing tattoo with intense focus. Every person in the room held their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The tension was so thick it felt like the air itself had become heavy and difficult to breathe. Sarah remained perfectly still and calm as Commander Hayes examined the wings on her wrist. She could see the wheels turning in his mind as he processed what he was seeing and made connections that her colleagues could never understand. She knew that in a matter of seconds everything would change, and the truth about her background would finally be revealed. Commander Hayes slowly released Sarah's hand, but his eyes remained locked on her face. The polite professional expression he had worn while meeting the other team members had completely disappeared. In its place was something much more serious and respectful. His entire posture shifted as he processed the full meaning of what he was seeing. The other Sterling Defense employees watched this interaction with growing confusion and worry. They had expected Commander Hayes to move quickly through the introductions and get started with the business meeting. Instead, he seemed fixated on Sarah and her tattoo in a way that made them increasingly uncomfortable. Jessica felt her stomach drop as she watched the commander's reaction. This was exactly what she had feared would happen. She was certain that Commander Hayes was offended by Sarah's unprofessional appearance and was about to say something that would ruin their chances of winning the contract. She shot a worried glance at Mr. Richardson, who looked equally concerned. Marcus shifted nervously from one foot to the other as the silence continued. He had been so confident that covering the tattoo would have been the smart choice. Now it seemed like their worst fears were coming true. The commander was clearly bothered by what he was seeing, and the whole meeting was starting. On the wrong foot, Tom and Lisa exchanged worried looks as they watched Commander Hayes continue to focus on Sarah. They had worked for months to prepare for this presentation, and now it seemed like everything might be ruined before they even had a chance to show their capabilities. The tattoo that they had all joked about for weeks was about to cost them the biggest contract in company history. But then something happened that no one in the room except Sarah could have predicted. Commander Hayes took a step back from Sarah and straightened his already perfect posture even more. His shoulders squared and his chin lifted as he assumed the rigid stance of a military officer, preparing for a formal ceremony. In one fluid and precise motion, Commander Hayes brought his right hand up to his forehead in a sharp, crisp military salute. His movements were perfect and practiced, showing decades of military training and discipline. His eyes remained focused directly on Sarah's face as he held the salute with unwavering precision. The effect on the room was immediate and dramatic. Every single person except Sarah gasped in shock and surprise. Mouths dropped open and eyes widened as they tried to process what they were seeing. The high-ranking Navy SEAL commander was saluting their colleague Sarah Martinez, the woman they had been mocking for weeks. Mr. Richardson felt like the floor had disappeared beneath his feet. He had never seen anything like this happen in a business meeting. Military officers did not salute civilian contractors. There had to be some explanation for what was happening, but he could not imagine what it might be. Jessica felt her face turn red with embarrassment and confusion. She had spent weeks making jokes about Sarah's tattoo and assuming it was just a trendy design with no real meaning. Now a decorated military commander was treating Sarah with the kind of respect reserved for fellow service members. Something was very wrong with all the assumptions she had made. Marcus stared in complete disbelief as the salute continued. He had been so certain that Sarah was just a quiet office worker, with a cute tattoo and no real military knowledge. But military commanders did not salute ordinary civilians. There had to be something about Sarah's background that none of them knew or understood. Sarah looked directly into Commander Hayes's eyes and without any hesitation or surprise returned his salute with perfect military precision. Her hand moved to her forehead in exactly the right position. Her posture became ramrod straight. Her movement showed the same practiced discipline and training that marked Commander Hayes as a career military officer. The two of them held their salutes for several seconds in complete silence while everyone else in the room watched in stunned amazement. It was clear that both Sarah and Commander Hayes knew exactly what they were doing and why they were doing it. This was not some kind of mistake or misunderstanding. This was a formal military greeting between two people who had earned the right to exchange such honors. When they finally lowered their salutes, Commander Hayes spoke in a voice filled with deep respect and emotion. "Chief Petty Officer Martinez, it is truly an honor to meet you. I have heard about your service and your courage. Thank you for everything you have done for our country and our fellow service members." The words hit the room like a thunderbolt. Chief Petty Officer. Those words changed everything that Sarah's colleagues thought they knew about her. She was not just some civilian office worker with a trendy tattoo. She was a former Navy service member who had earned a senior enlisted rank in the respect of high-ranking officers. Sarah responded, in a clear, steady voice that carried the same authority and confidence as Commander Hayes. "The honor is mine, Commander. I am grateful for the opportunity to serve our military clients in my current capacity." Her words were formal and respectful, but also showed that she was completely comfortable speaking with high-ranking military officers. Mr. Richardson finally found his voice and managed to ask the question that everyone in the room was thinking. "Commander Hayes, I'm sorry, but I think we are all a bit confused. Are you saying that Sarah served in the Navy?" He looked back and forth between Sarah and the commander, trying to understand what was happening. "Commander," Hayes turned to address the entire group, while keeping one hand respectfully positioned behind his back in a military at ease stance. "Ladies and gentlemen, you are in the presence of a genuine American hero. Chief Petty Officer Martinez served with distinction as a Navy rescue swimmer for 8 years. She risked her life countless times to save others, including several of my own men." The room remained completely silent as everyone processed this information. Sarah Martinez, the woman they had been making jokes about for weeks, was a decorated military veteran who had served in one of the most dangerous and demanding roles in the entire Navy. The quiet professional they had assumed was just another office worker was actually a trained rescue specialist who had saved lives in combat situations. "Commander," Hayes continued speaking with obvious pride and respect in his voice, "the wings you see on her wrist are not a fashion accessory or a trendy design. They are the symbol of a Navy rescue swimmer. Those wings have to be earned through months of the most physically and mentally demanding training that our military has to offer. Less than 1% of people who attempt that training program ever earn the right to wear those wings." Jessica felt like she was going to be sick as she realized how wrong she had been about everything. She had spent weeks researching wing tattoos online and making jokes about Sarah copying trendy designs from social media. Now she learned that Sarah's wings represented real courage and sacrifice that Jessica could never understand or match. Marcus stared at Sarah with new eyes, trying to reconcile the quiet woman he thought he knew with the military hero Commander Hayes was describing. All those comments about her tattoo being impulsive or meaningless now seemed not just wrong, but actually insulting to someone who had risked her life for others. The revelation was just beginning, and everyone in the room knew that their understanding of Sarah Martinez had been completely wrong from the very first day she walked into their office. Commander Hayes was not finished sharing the truth about Sarah Martinez. He turned to face the entire group of Sterling Defense employees who were still standing in shocked silence, trying to process what they had just learned. His expression showed both pride in Sarah's accomplishments and disappointment in how she had been treated by people who should have known better. "Chief Petty Officer Martinez earned those wings through one of the most demanding training programs in the entire United States military," Commander Hayes continued. "Navy rescue swimmer training has a failure rate of over 90%. The physical requirements alone eliminate most candidates before they even begin the real challenges. But Sarah not only completed the training, she graduated at the top of her class. Sarah stood quietly listening to Commander Hayes describe her service record. She had never wanted this level of attention or recognition. She preferred to let her current work speak for itself, rather than relying on past accomplishments. But she also understood that sometimes the truth needed to be told, especially when people had made such wrong assumptions about who she was. Commander Hayes looked directly at Sarah as he continued speaking. During her 8 years of active duty, Chief Martinez completed over 200 rescue missions in some of the most dangerous conditions imaginable. She saved 43 lives, including military personnel and civilians. Her courage and skill under pressure were legendary among the rescue swimmer community. The room remained completely silent as everyone absorbed this information. 43 lives saved, 200 rescue missions. These numbers were far beyond anything that Sarah's colleagues could have imagined when they were making jokes about her small tattoo and questioning her judgment. Jessica felt tears forming in her eyes as she realized the full extent of how wrong she had been. She had spent weeks assuming that Sarah was just another office worker, trying to seem interesting with a trendy tattoo. Now she learned that Sarah had literally jumped out of helicopters into stormy seas to save drowning people. The courage required for such actions was something Jessica could not even begin to comprehend. Marcus shifted uncomfortably as he thought about all the comments he had made about Sarah's tattoo being a basic choice made without thought or meaning. He realized now that every time he had made a joke about her wings, he had been mocking a symbol of genuine heroism and sacrifice. The shame he felt was almost overwhelming. But Commander Hayes was still not finished with his account of Sarah's service record. He looked around the room, making eye contact with each person to ensure they understood the full significance of what he was about to share. There is one particular mission that I want to tell you about because it directly affected my family and my unit. 3 years ago, during a joint training exercise, off the coast of California, a Navy helicopter,
carrying 6 of my SEAL team members,
experienced mechanical failure during a storm. The helicopter went down in 20-foot waves with zero visibility and water temperature below 50 degrees. These were conditions that would kill most people within minutes. Sarah felt her chest tighten as Commander Hayes began describing that night. She remembered every detail of the rescue mission that had nearly cost her own life. The storm had been one of the worst she had ever flown into. The waves were so high that the rescue helicopter could barely maintain position. The water was so cold that survival time was measured in minutes, not hours. Chief Martinez was the rescue swimmer on duty that night. Commander Hayes continued. When the call came in about the downed helicopter, she immediately volunteered for what everyone knew was an extremely dangerous rescue operation. The conditions were so bad that several senior officers questioned whether any rescue attempt should even be made. Commander Hayes paused for a moment, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. But Sarah insisted that they had to try. She said that leaving fellow service members in the water was not an option, regardless of the personal risk. She suited up and prepared to jump into conditions that would have terrified most trained rescue swimmers. The rescue operation took over 4 hours in deteriorating weather conditions. Sarah made 6 separate trips into the water, jumping from the helicopter again and again to reach each of the downed SEAL team members. By the 4th rescue, she was showing signs of severe hypothermia, but refused medical attention until all 6 men were safely aboard the helicopter. Tom and Lisa looked at each other in amazement, trying to imagine the physical and mental strength required to complete such a mission. They had worked in comfortable offices their entire careers and had never faced any situation that required real physical courage or personal sacrifice. Sarah had risked her own life 6 separate times in one night to save others. One of those SEAL team members was my nephew, Lieutenant James Hayes, Commander Hayes said with obvious emotion in his voice. He was unconscious when Sarah reached him and would have drowned within minutes if she had not gotten to him when she did. She literally saved his life and the lives of 5 other highly trained warriors that night. Commander Hayes looked directly at Sarah with deep gratitude and respect. Because of her courage and skill, my nephew came home to his wife and 2 young children. Because of her dedication, 5 other families did not receive the worst news that any military family can get. Chief Martinez is the reason that 6 American heroes are still alive today. The presentation meeting that Sterling Defense had planned seemed completely unimportant now compared to the revelation about Sarah's true background. Mr. Richardson realized that having a genuine military hero on their team was worth more than any contract they could win. Sarah's knowledge and experience would bring credibility to every proposal they submitted. Commander Hayes finally addressed the business reason for his visit, but his tone made it clear that the contract decision had already been influenced by learning about Sarah's presence on the team. Any company that has the wisdom to employ someone of Chief Martinez's caliber and experience clearly understands what it takes to serve our military effectively, he said. The contract negotiations that followed were more like a formality than a competitive presentation. Commander Hayes asked detailed technical questions that Sarah answered with the expertise of someone who had lived and worked in military operations. Her colleagues watched in amazement as she demonstrated knowledge that came from real experience, rather than textbook learning. When the meeting concluded, Commander Hayes announced that Sterling Defense contractors had been awarded the $42 million Atlantic Defense contract. He specifically mentioned that having Sarah on their team had been a decisive factor in his decision to trust them with such an important project. After Commander Hayes left the office, the Sterling Defense team remained in the conference room trying to process everything that had happened. The woman they had been mocking and dismissing for weeks had just helped them win the biggest contract in company history. Her military service and expertise had impressed their most important client in ways that none of them could have achieved. 1. By one, Sarah's colleagues approached her to apologize for their behavior over the previous weeks. Jessica was the first to speak with tears in her eyes as she said how sorry she was for making assumptions and jokes about Sarah's tattoo. She realized now that she had been mocking a symbol of courage and service that she could never hope to match. Marcus simply said thank you for your service and walked away, clearly ashamed of how he had treated a military veteran. Tom and Lisa apologized together, acknowledging that they had been wrong to make judgments about something they did not understand. Jennifer from accounting hugged Sarah and said she felt honored to work with a real American hero. Sarah accepted all of their apologies with the same grace and professionalism she had shown throughout their weeks of mockery. She did not make anyone feel worse than they already did about their assumptions and comments. Instead, she suggested that they all focus on moving forward and working together as a team. Mr. Richardson promoted Sarah to senior partner that same afternoon, recognizing both her military expertise and her crucial role in winning the Atlantic Defense contract. Her salary was doubled, and she was given her own office with a view of the city. More importantly, she finally received the respect and recognition that her service and skills deserved. The small wing tattoo on Sarah's wrist was never mentioned mockingly again. New employees who joined the company were quickly educated about its true meaning by the existing staff who had learned never to make assumptions about their colleagues. The wings became a symbol of the courage and dedication that Sterling Defense contractors valued in all of their employees. That Sarah continued to do excellent work, and her reputation in the defense contracting industry grew rapidly. She was invited to speak at military conferences and consulted on major projects across the country. But most importantly, she had taught an entire office full of people a valuable lesson about respect, assumptions, and the importance of looking beyond surface appearances to discover the true character of the people around them.